An overtime loss is certainly not what the Seattle Kraken wanted, but at least getting to overtime and getting a point is definitely what the Kraken needed. We'll talk about that loss to Vancouver in an overtime shootout and what needs to change as Seattle has two more games at home against Edmonton and the New Jersey Devils.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we bring you your favorite team, the Seattle Kraken, every single day. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet and get started with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And where we're going to start with this game is we'll take it. We don't like it, but we'll take it. Remember, if you watched or listened to yesterday's episode of Locked On Kraken, Zane wanted to see the Seattle Kraken have a good start to the game, and they did. But I reminded you, not just against Vancouver, but this Seattle Kraken team overall, it's really the first 40 minutes, and it was the first 40 minutes that did in particularly the second portion of that. So the second 20 minutes, the second period that did the Seattle Kraken in. You love that they got the early start. We even, we kind of went in on Chandler Stevenson yesterday. And wouldn't you know that not only Chandler Stevenson, but also Andre Burakovsky at the top of the table when it comes to game score in this game. I still reserve the right to be a little salty with the both of them, but we'll talk about that a little bit more as the show goes on. So on the one hand, you love to see Chandler Stevenson. It wasn't a fancy goal or anything, but it's one of those goals that the Seattle Kraken desperately need, at least one of those goals. Shoot, see what happens kind of goal. Chandler Stevenson gets a good one. Matty Beniers scored in this one, a really nice power play goal, needed that. But the Seattle Kraken, more than anything, needed to be able to take care of the puck, and that just didn't happen. The Seattle Kraken also needed to find some consistency. That didn't happen. Now, what did happen is that they get a point. That is critically important. Getting points, however they come, is going to be important for this Seattle Kraken team, but you love to see it that in the first 2 minutes of the game, Chandler Stevenson finds the back of the net, assisted by Andre Burakovsky and Vince Dunn. But then it's, we get 3 unanswered after that. And before you know it, it's 3-1 for Vancouver. And, they get another one then. So it's 3-1 with, 15 or so minutes left in the third period. That's when that power play goal for Matty Beniers came. So you like the opportunity there. Then Vince Dunn coming up huge at the 19:07 mark. So within the last minute of play, once again, the Seattle Kraken able to get something going. And then it goes to a shootout. We saw 2 different goaltenders for Vancouver here. Smart for Vancouver to change it up a little bit. Lankinen came in, did really well in the shootout in particular. JT Miller, your lone goal scorer in the shootout. Bjorkstrand Kakko missed the mark, and Matty Beniers, he had his shot saved. So that might be something that we need to see a little bit more. I don't think the Seattle Kraken have ever been particularly well in the shootout. It is something you have to practice. It's also one of those things, if you got to that point in the game, who the heck knows what's going down? But, of course, there were things to like from this game. There were also things we don't like from this game? You like that the power play was 2 for 2. You like that the Seattle Kraken, were able to mount a comeback. I think if you look at the instant analysis from Allison Lucan, you don't love that it was not a quality start from Philip Grubauer. Neither goaltender gave a quality start. So, okay, not a big deal there. You like to see that on 5-on-5 offense, puck in the offensive zone, Seattle Kraken was right there with Vancouver. In fact, 40% to 39%. High danger chances, though, favored the Canucks. 8 high danger chances to 5 for the Seattle Kraken. Turnover chances 8 to 5, more for Vancouver. And the shot attempts 45 for Vancouver, 40 for Seattle. What you don't like are the 5-on-5 defensive numbers, particularly when it comes to puck battle wins. 71% for Vancouver, 29% for the Seattle Kraken. So it's really the small things, and I hate saying that they're small. I think that we might want to say that they're small because they're not talked about, they don't pop on the box score, they're not sexy, but these are the things, these are the fundamental things that you need to win hockey games. And the Seattle Kraken are not winning hockey games because they're not able to do the small things, like put a full game together, like, um I just don't know. So again, we'll take it, but I don't think you can feel great about this because there's just so much work still that this Seattle Kraken team needs to do. And again, talked about it with Zame. I've talked about it all season long. I don't think that we lack the capability. The Seattle Kraken do not lack the capability, the skill, or the wherewithal and awareness to do these things. So then that's what makes it even more frustrating. So why isn't it getting done? So can't wear the UMA hat, didn't get a win, did get a point. I mean, the guys really didn't have much to say after this game either. I feel like I'm kind of following in their footsteps here. There's not really much else to say, but coming up, we are going to hear from Matty Beniers. I mentioned Chandler Stevenson. I'll go over the game score again, and we'll hear from Dan Bylsma on why, again, you'll take the point, but this isn't good enough for the Seattle Kraken. Philip Grubauer, serviceable, nothing, super, nothing that stands out comparative to what we've seen in the last handful of games. But it's placement. It's, there are times where we're leaving the far post exposed, forwards not sagging down a little bit to help on the defensive side of things, puck watching and then realizing way too late, backdoor exposed. These are things that drive me up a wall, and they are prevalent. They are too characteristic, way too characteristic of the Seattle Kraken franchise, not just this season, but again, these are things that we've talked about before, and it really comes down to a commitment. So we're going to talk about Chandler Stevenson. Love that some things did pop here, and it has to be more. It has to be more from him, more from everyone, more from the leadership, more from this team. It just has to be more. So we'll hear from Matty Beniers coming up on this episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Now, we know that the NFL playoffs are right around the corner, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up that W. You might love looking at future bets. You might like looking at the over-unders, the money line, all of those things. But the only way you can do all of those things and activate is by heading over to fanduel.com to join today. That's fanduel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL and us here at the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica L. Ayala here, your host of Locked On Kraken. And I mean, I'm not going to get excited one way or another about this game. I mean, it was a game. It happened. A point was secured, but it goes back to what Zane was saying. Did the Seattle Kraken take opportunities to really manage this game? And I think the answer is no, but let's go to, game score. Take it to overtime. So you love the fight, the grit coming back. But even after that goal from Vince Dunn, I know I still have the graphic up for those on YouTube. I'm just like, I don't know. You don't need to see my dejected, unimpressed face. Anyway, I want to go to the game score here. Andre Burakovsky, much more responsible. If you look at his impact, particularly on the offensive side, that's kind of that teal. We want to say it is teal, or is it a little darker? Either way, you can see the game score there. Same thing for Chandler Stevenson. Not as much as a liability on the defensive side. Look at that. That's that purple individual and team defense. Now, if you look at team defense in particular, Brandon Montour takes the cake there. McCann, Tolvanen, Bjorkstrand also positive there, Jamie Alexiak. And then you've got, now Josh Mahura, not someone that we talked about so much on yesterday's episode, but Zane and I talked about Josh Mahura. He got, high praise from Dan Bylsma, according to game score. This game against Vancouver, not one of his best. Same thing with Jaden Schwartz, who's been amazing, Riker Evans, etc. But even Capo Caco, Matty Beniers, kind of middle of the pack there. Shane Wright with that beautiful pass to find Matty Beniers. Shane Wright's been fantastic, phenomenal. And you can see, especially in that individual offense category, Wright, Beniers, Dunn even, really fantastic for the Seattle Kraken. But, the overall individual defensive efforts, you really don't see anyone standing out here. And I think even if you look at the team defense above average, again, just a handful of players. So that's something, if we just look at the game score, that I'd like to see shored up. But again, did have some good performances, including from Matty Beniers, third game straight with a goal. I've kind of alluded to it as I'm feeling kind of the way the guys are feeling, but I still want you to hear from Matty B. And how's he contextualizing this game?
Good looks in overtime. What did you see, from the extra period there?
I thought we possessed it well. I think, like you said, we got some good looks, and, he made some big saves.
You came back from less of a deficit this time around, and it went to shootout instead of overtime. But did you see any kind of improvement between the way you guys played the Canucks this time versus 5 days ago?
Yeah, way better. I thought our first period we played really well, and second we kind of let them get some momentum there, and so we got to work on that, putting 3 periods more consistently together. But like you said, we came back in the third strong and were able to tie it up. So it was a good pushback. But if we can put ourselves in better situations going into the third, I think we're gonna have more success.
What did you see on your own goal?
Ryder just made a great pass in the middle, and I hit it.
Man, a few words there, but I mean, he pretty much nailed it. Giving this team a better chance at success going into the third period is exactly what we talked about on yesterday's episode. I mean, the numbers are very abysmal when the Seattle Kraken don't take a lead going into the third frame and rearing its ugly head once again. And so you get the early start from Chandler Stevenson, a better game per game score from Stevenson, from Burakovsky, but then everything else kind of falls off. So what's going on there? And again, I think it comes down to what the Seattle Kraken are doing when it comes to the offensive zone, when it comes to the neutral zone, and how they're managing the puck. And some of the frustration coming from Dan Bylsma was because the lack of puck management or the lapses in puck management gave extra work to key players for the Seattle Kraken team. So it has this ripple effect, not being individually responsible, not being responsible and thinking of the team as a collective unit has negative repercussions. And then the standout players sometimes, like a Vince Dunn, who you'll hear him talk about, they're not able to do what they do. But also, should we always rely on certain players to kind of pick up the slack? There's way too much slack, it just seems like to me, for the Seattle Kraken team. So we're going to close out with hear a little bit from Dan Bylsma. What needs to change? I know some of this sounds like a broken record, but I do appreciate that Dan Bylsma is coming at this. He is speaking on it. And if he's telling us in media, I can only imagine what he is saying to the team. So we'll break it down. What went wrong in the eyes of Dan Bylsma coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our good friends at Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? I have been using Rocket Money for a little while now, so I can tell you firsthand how I use it. A lot of people like to use Rocket Money to keep an eye on their subscriptions, and that's definitely a way that I've used it. But I actually really like the spending or monitoring the spending. I can connect multiple different accounts, have them all in one place, and I get alerts like, hey, this seems like more money than you usually withdraw. Is that what you meant to do? Things of that nature I really find great. And in case you're new to Rocket Money, it is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitor your spending like I was just talking about, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, which again is one of my favorite things about it. Whether that's your subscriptions, your spending habits, even the goals that you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users, and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members each around $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. So cancel unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on today. That's right. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on. Once again, that's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. Thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica L. Ayala here, your host of Locked On Kraken. And if you haven't checked it out already, head over to Locked On NHL. And tomorrow on Saturday, we have the Women's Hockey Report. We go deep. We dive deep into the trade that just happened between Toronto and Ottawa. And we cycle back to our conversation about Women's World Juniors, what age groups, and we read some of your comments that you left on social media and or YouTube. So that's going to be Saturday morning with the Women's Hockey Report on the Locked On NHL channel. We'll take the point and we have to improve. And that was really the takeaway message from Dan Bylsma. I'm going to analyze it. I've already kind of done some of that, but I really just want you to hear from him. He had complimentary things to say about Matty Beniers, who again scored in his third consecutive game. But let's hear what he had to say, particularly about managing the puck.
Really, I just a few non-intelligent puck plays in the second period. It's critical in the second period with your puck play. We had 3 of them that cost us in having to play D zone for a long period of time. And, I don't think it's any secret. Like we're a minute into a shift or 50 seconds into a shift, we turn the puck over. Vince Dunn at that point was dead tired at that point and just produced another minute and a half in the D zone, and you're playing D zone tired. They had the full court press on, and that happened again. Too many times it happened again. We had the turnover deep into a shift at the blue line again, and it turned into a 2.5 minute shift for, I think it was Dunner and Larson and Ryder and Borky.
And how about Philip Grubauer during that sequence as well to manage the game and keep you in it?
Yeah, all the guys on the ice, you got to batten the hatches and buckle down and kind of dig one out. And, you don't want to be in that spot. But when you're in it, you gotta dig down and battle and block shots and have your goalie come up with huge saves for us, which did happen in that game, but it took away from the momentum we had in the first period.
I mean, there you go. You work so hard. This is something that has not come easy. The Seattle Kraken starting on time, getting a lead early, and you do that, only to kind of fudge it up. And, Jeff Baker over at NHL.com/Kraken kind of wrote about this. Shane Wright in particular was someone that was getting caught on the ice. Vince Dunn was mentioned just now by Dan Bylsma. And that impacts how those players impact the game. I do think you have to give credit, and this is something Dan Bylsma alludes to. I mean, Vancouver played smart. Make it difficult. And that's something I would love to see the Kraken be able to do. Expose the weaknesses of their opponents. Vancouver noticed in the shift or in the period of the long change that the Seattle Kraken were not getting their timing right. The communication was a little bit off. And so what do? You win the puck battles. You win the puck battles. You control the tempo. And so that's what Vancouver did. They exposed that. The Seattle Kraken could not, at least in the second frame, get that momentum back. So now they're working to dig themselves out of a hole. And that on top of long shifts is a lot. It's a lot. But that's why the comments there, he was talking specifically about getting hemmed into the zone. Piper Shaw asked the question. But this is the quote for me. You just heard it, but I want to read it again. To manage the game, all the guys on the ice have to batten down the hatches and buckle down. Kind of dig one out. You don't want to be in that spot, but when you're in it, you've got to dig down and battle and block shots. You have your goal late, but it took away from the momentum we had in the first period, and it took us a while to get it back. You have to battle and block shots. You have to batten down the hatches and buckle down, kind of dig one out. The grit, the sandpaper, the piss and vinegar missing since Ryan Donato. I mean, I'm not lying. I'm also saying that because this is why. I did not mean to rant this late in the episode, but now I'm here and I have arrived and I'm going with it. This is why players like Ryan Donato are important. Why players like Yanni Gourde are important. Yanni's sandpaper is a little bit different. Ryan Donato will get you the ugliest goal at the best time. That's why I like the guy. Who does that for us? Jaden Schwartz, I think, is the closest. We're starting to see Matty Beniers have that urgency. Shane Wright's instincts are stellar. But when you only have a few guys doing that, and they may not all be on the ice at the same time, they may not all be activated on their, P&V, sandpaper mode. You have to see that and be impassioned and inspired and support your teammate going at it, trying to dig one out. You have to identify that because we do have guys that can do that, right? Gamers, as I talked about on the other episode. Who are the gamers? We've got some gamers. I don't think their game mode is activated all of the time. I'd like to see, we got to level up. You know how when you play video games, like, your little mushrooms or your stars or whatever it is, your lives, we need to advance into how much we can take and still sustain our gamer mode. In that way, we are a little bit, as Kobe Bryant might have said, soft. Soft. It's a little, sometimes the Kraken play a little soft. I mean, I don't want to admit it, but sometimes it's a little, it lacks the P&V, it lacks the sandpaper, it lacks the moxie and the pride, right? Play for some free, dig one out. I love that quote. I hate that Dan Bylsma has to keep saying it, but that's what we need. That's what we need. Brushes of brilliance in the last handful of games, but also I don't want us to have to manufacture the juice, right? You got to come with it. Whether you're winning, whether you're losing, you got to have that juice, internal juice meter. What is there? What are we afraid of? Sometimes I hate to say it. What are we afraid of? What is this team afraid of? What do they have to unburden and let go so they can play free? Let's get back to the 3/4 Fs. Fun, fast, forechecking, and free. It's missing. I'm flying out to Seattle in a few hours. If I could, I would give it to this team. I'm a little too juiced up sometimes recording this podcast. But you got to build it on your own. And I don't know why this team is having difficulty, because on paper, this is the best we've ever had. Something's got to give. I feel like I keep playing the hits. Something's got to give. Show them who you are. P&V, sandpaper, moxie, juice, jam, all of the things. Put together a picnic basket of grit. A picnic basket of grit. That's what I want to see. I'm going to finish packing because if there's one thing about me, I don't pack on time. All right. Be kind to yourselves. Be kind to one another. We've got PWHL action, World Juniors. I mean, it's exciting. Canada. I mean, probably not if you're a Team Canada fan, but hey, I love to see it. We'll talk more about that next week. Be kind to yourselves. Be kind to one another. Hold fast. Stay true. And let's go Kraken. Let's get that picnic basket of grit. I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody.